Morning, Abe,
Hey, good morning, Matt.
and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. Happy New
Yeah,
Year. Feels like we haven't done this in a while.
yeah, that's true. That's true. This is the first in the new year, so
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Let's
All
see
right,
here.
where do we get going here? Where do we begin? How's the mountain?
Yeah. What are we talking about today? There's a lot going on, right? There's been so much going on. We wanted to touch on some of those topics and really yeah, it feels like we're weeks even from some of these topics like the fires, but to really talk on and see now from where we were before, how we're doing and what's going on. But yeah, housing outlook, that's number one.
Yeah,
We
that's
get
the
we get asked this question a lot, right? All the
right.
time. Almost every time we interact with agents, it's like, hey, what's gonna happen this year? Or what's the outlook look like this year? And so yeah, we thought we'd touch on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the last few years we've there's been so many missed predictions, right? Of things are going to get better, things are going to get a lot worse. It's sort of just kind of been more of the same in a lot of ways, with little signs here and there of the market picking up, having like a little false start last what was September last year. There's a little bit of false start of rates coming down and market picking up from a demand standpoint, and then cooled off pretty quickly when rates jumped up. What was about it? Was it almost a? It wasn't a full point. Was it almost a full point? They jumped up within that like last part of September. It was pretty significant. Um,
It was, yeah. We were in like the
yeah,
mid fives ish or so. Then we jumped back up into the sixes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
So I
even
think
earlier, it looked like we might be getting close to seven again, or actually, the national average was a little over seven.
right.
Um, and today, kind of in our locale, we've trickled down to about six and a half, 6.625,
Yeah,
which is not terrible, but yeah, there's been some movement for sure, and people, reacting one way or another. But I do remember when this all started, kind of, 2022-ish. And hearing people in the mortgage field make predictions, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and even the Mortgage Banking Association, having these like pretty wild predictions like, hey, we'll be fine. Like, give it a year, within
right.
18 months, there'll be refi booms happening and stuff like that. And they weren't completely right with all that, right? So rates in the
Yeah,
fours, we heard CEOs of big companies talking about that, and I don't want to say their names specifically, but rhymes with umpus. Um,
right, right.
Saying we'll be back in the fours in no time, and the market will be stimulated, and we be back to the good old days in some ways. But here we are. So yeah, um,
Yeah,
not quite happening the way people thought. Wish it were, but we've always kind of preached like, let's be prepared for the worst, but hope for the best.
yeah, absolutely. I think that the whole thing is the same story of the people stuck in their mortgages, right? Like when does that sort of it's like squeezing, demand through a really small, you know, opening of and we're just not seeing that sort of opening up of that, right? It's just not happening, and nothing's getting them unstuck. There's no external or internal motivation that's pushing people to take a higher mortgage, and it's just not happening. And so I think that there's no reason to think that that's going to really happen again this year if rates stay. You mentioned the 2022 peak, and that was really still, I think it was still around 4.9% was interest rates, somewhere around there, high fours. And then once it crossed over that is when we saw the demand fall. That was the peak of demand, was there in April of 2022. And so when you look at that, it's like you're going, well, that's where we got to get to. It's not something with a five in front of it. It's probably something with a high four or a really low five in front of it.
Mhm.
That's actually going to break people free. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah. I
so,
remember October 2023 when it felt like things came to a like screeching halt because
right,
rates hit eight, right? And it was
right,
like, no, what's going to happen here, right? And we were all kind of trying to figure out what's going on, and people in the business were struggling, right? Companies were starting to see really some fatal levels of cash flow issues,
right.
um, and yeah, like I just it almost feels like yesterday, but it feels like so long ago too. And here we are today, post election. Everyone was kind of waiting for that. as kind of like a, hey, we'll see what happens. And here we are today, and not a huge change. Still a lot of hope, I think. Sentiment seems like from the time the election was happening, and everyone was really excited about some change and some stimulus, to the economy. Um, that now things are kind of settling in, and we're staring down like tariffs and what that means for our country, and involvement in different wars and whatnot, what that means for the economy, and realizing, hey, things are a little bit more complex than the rhetoric kind of let on, and
Yeah,
we just have to see how things shake out.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think I'm going to put up the. I think it's appropriate to talk about kind of the CPI, since that's kind of been like this recent thing, as far as like making people feel more hopeless about rates coming down anytime soon, right? But I think that there's some interesting data in here. So I was going to show this here. So if anybody's actually watching this, they could see. Housing now is 60% of that CPI inflation. Um, so all the other categories like transportation, food, and beverages, they've stayed relatively. They haven't gone down. They're still have some inflation there, but it's manageable. It's where it needs to be. It's really housing that's continuing to drive that CPI number. And so, in essence, most of the job is done with killing inflation, right? It seems like, and you were mentioning that it's kind of the asset sort of bubble that came from the stimulus, right? That money's been burned up a little bit to some extent, right?
Yeah, and I bet that was the purpose in a lot of ways. We injected $5 trillion during that time through a few rounds of stimulus, EIDL loans, PPP loans, and I think for the most part, Americans acted right with those and spent it the way they should spend it, as kind of defined by the government, the IRS at that time. Um, but we know that probably emboldened people having that money in the bank and having security for their business and their cost of business to then
Right,
spend their disposable income. And you can see it clearly. Cars went crazy, right? The cost of cars went crazy. You couldn't find certain cars available because they were just selling out all the time. Housing is
yeah,
one thing, but then food and beverage, people were taking trips, vacations, going out to eat, right? Once the what do you call it, restrictions were let loosened a little bit. And so here we are today. You can see it. I mean, this chart clearly somewhere in the middle of January 2020, I'm sorry, the year 2023, towards the end of the year, where again, rates hit 8% in mortgage.
right.
Um, that a lot of that spending went down, and it did like sop up all that money that was being slushed around.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely, and it's important also. Like, so essentially, if interest rates did come down, and when I'm taking interest rates, I'm speaking of the Fed rate. If the Fed cut rates right now, um, presumably you would maybe think that that would probably be something they could do, because housing is really inflating that number, and housing prices don't actually affect the CPI data, because they don't take into effect home prices. They only take in rents. And the this metric here, if you see this, um, you can see it's already weighted. Housing is about 43% or so of the weighting that they look at CPI data. It just happens to be 60% of the inflation right now, but it's already heavily weighted. But the biggest part of that weight is this thing called owner equivalent rent, which is really just calling homeowners and asking them, if someone were going to rent your house, what do you think they would rent it for? And so there is a correlation, right? Maybe to what their perception of home prices are, thinking what their mortgage is, what they would want to rent it for. But it's still not a great number in my opinion. But what do you think as far as that idea?
Yeah, given that, if you're surveying homeowners based on what they think their primary residence is going to rent for, it's a sentiment thing in some ways, rather than like data driven fully by actual numbers of what rents have been doing. Because we
Right,
know, and we've seen rents kind of stabilize, maybe even go down in some areas. Here in California, of course, it's kind of an interesting market, but we have seen rents go up. Let's say even in the short run, recently due to the fires, right? And
Right.
demand going up like crazy. And so yeah, it's a weird one in terms of a metric, but it is a huge piece of what the CPI data is reporting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, if you were looking at your most bullish case for inflation, right? Like, meaning, I think you could say it's a good chance that as we, if the Fed decides they don't like this metric or they're okay with kind of ignoring it and saying, I think based on all the other non-housing related CPI is seemed like it's under control, that we can start to put those rates down. And I think that once the sentiment and news of like, hey, inflation has kind of come under control, and then I think then I think that we could see mortgage rates then come down, like the 10-year treasury affected by that. And that would be the most bullish case to say like rates could still come down. I don't see them coming down to where that 4%, 5%, but I can see them coming down. And I also don't think that, my opinion is that I don't think that's going to send people into this like clamoring buying spree and prices jumping up again, because I do think that we've already seen, like we talked about last, I think was it last month, like some places where people are spending 70 to 75, 80% of their income on their mortgage and housing payments, right? So it's really, a lot of places have nowhere to go really, even if rates come down a little bit, right? I mean, they can go a little bit, but affordability is stretched so thin, so many places, that I feel like,
Absolutely.
so I think that there could be some good opportunities, like in what I was calling like these spillover areas. Like we saw Laguna Niguel, which beautiful city, but I think that it had a increase in median price. I think there's some outliers here, but like 40% January to January. And I feel like that might be just people that are getting priced out of certain other areas, maybe the really on the coast cities, or maybe Irvine, that might say, hey, Laguna Niguel's got great schools. It's got what we need. Maybe we'll go spend our money there instead. We saw that before in areas like Southeast Costa Mesa by Newport Back Bay, where people that maybe couldn't get to Newport anymore went there. It's the next kind of area over. So I think there's those areas that might see some increases beyond, once rates come back down. But I feel like some of the most prime areas where people have really stretched themselves to be in those zip codes, I just think it's like there's not much more that that where things can go. That now you never know. You're always surprised in this market, right, or in this industry. But
There's always outliers and pockets, right? We were talking about Lake Tahoe. I'm supposed to be heading out this weekend to Lake Tahoe to enjoy the snow a little bit. Love that place, and have been kind of browsing home prices there, but realizing, man, that place is on fire, right? It's been
right,
going up in price. The inventory is still relatively low up there, but people are like not just moving there, but buying second homes. And finding a lot of like, I don't know, like excitement doing that, right? And reasons to buy there. And so
right,
we saw that neighborhood saw a huge influx during the pandemic because of the shutdown and needing to work from home, and people were rationalizing, okay, I'm in the Silicon Valley, I'm paying a ton of money for this like 1,400 square foot house in Palo Alto. Why don't I
right.
just take it to Lake Tahoe and just be somewhere beautiful, and get more square footage and some better landscape, right? And so that's the stuff is still happening, and ultimately the fundamental is, if the real estate is good, or if you're in a great locale, chances are you're going to be fine, right? But if you were kind of in these outlier areas where you saw a huge bump in in value because people were speculating and investing, that there's probably been some correction there, and we saw that in 2007 and 8 as well, right?
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. Well, as a
yeah,
matter of fact, let me show you
yeah,
this here. If you can see
yeah.
this, this is a graph of like where home prices have had good appreciation since March of 2020, right? We're kind of versus places that have had some retraction, and like the Bay Area, and Austin, Texas. Oh, is this the one I wanted to see? Let's see. No, actually, let me take that off. I have another one here that was not there, but I noticed that Austin, Texas, for instance, is down 15% since like the peak. That was since 2020. I have another slide. That's since the peak. And so some places are off like pretty significantly from that April 2022 peak. And I think Austin is about down 15. I think a lot of the Silicon Valley Bay Area cities are also in the negative. Whereas where we are, we're still in Southern California, we're still kind of in the blue, other than I think Riverside, San Bernardino are maybe kind of break even. They haven't really appreciated as much since the peak. But you've seen, like Orange County, even LA County, still doing well since the peak, right? There are a lot of places, and I think this Florida, I think is having some trouble right now. I think they're like 7 of the top 10 cities that saw a decrease this last year were in Florida, and I think Austin. It's pretty much Florida and Texas were the places that lost value this last year. And I think,
Yeah, remember we took that trip to Austin. We saw so many cranes in the sky,
right,
that
yeah,
they were building and building and building. And it was interesting to see as we toured homes that, hey, some of these condo complexes, actually, there's a lot of inventory that hasn't sold yet, but there's still like 3 or 4 more condo complexes coming in. And so yeah, I think it is. We were talking about this earlier too, that maybe the thing that stabilizes the market and brings affordability back, is just a supply thing, right? There's got to be more supply.
right,
And yeah, maybe some of the housing pricing going up was a result of not having enough houses for people to buy. And so people were overbidding on things that, and fighting for the same house, right? So I think you're seeing that in Austin and maybe Florida. It's some of that, but also some of the hurricanes and things, and people realizing, hey, this is a good place to be for certain times of the year. Maybe some of that factors in.
sure, sure,
But overall, yeah, once you have a stronger, more robust supply, it seems like pricing should stabilize at the very least, if not come down a little bit, given all things being the same. Interest rates not changing, all that stuff. And so see what
yeah,
happens here. But there's a ton of building going on. I'll say that, right? And yeah, a
there is
ton
for
of
sure.
building. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's supposed to happen, right? But in downtown LA too, or in the LA area, it sounds like half the people are willing to build, half the people are waiting to see what the costs of building are going to be like,
yeah.
in terms of new like high-rise development or whatnot. So it's just like kind of a wait and see game right now, it feels like, on that
Yeah,
front.
I was listening to someone who's a national builder person saying that like there's kind of some concern over people that aren't on the market yet with their builds right now yet, that there might be oversupply, and might cut into some of their builder profits. I mean, which is not bad for buyers, right? But not great for building and also building starts going forward. But one of the things was that the other question was these 3-2-1 buy downs that builders have been doing over the last 3 years, how that's going to affect things. Because a lot of people got into these new builds with those. The biggest, source of those buy downs were from builders, right? Builders were offering those out. So, how people were going to react to these newer communities, especially if, like you were saying earlier, if you moved out to a community that's a little further out, but you're able to buy a new home and you were able to not have to compete with all the low inventory, and you bought something and now your payment's gone up by, 10, 20%, 30%. And you're going, man, I'm living out here and now I'm paying this much. I
Yeah.
thought my income was going to go up, or I thought this was going to happen, or I thought the price is going to appreciate. I was going to sell it now,
Mhm.
and I can't. We'll see how that also affects some of those communities as well, that where people were buying out and newer builds other places. That'll be something to watch.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, I think what was I going to say here? Yeah, you know, the residential, the market in California, I think, like in 2025, I feel like you can almost feel that it's your internal motivation that needs to guide you, which I always say, I don't like timing the market. I don't like telling people that get in now because when rates go down, people are going to start buying. I don't like telling people to act now, right, because of this or that. But I do think that it's to me, it feels like a fairly safe time to say, um, you know, nothing's going to change that drastically in 2025 either way. So let your internal needs, motivation guide you. If you want to buy something now, don't think prices are going down, so you're going to wait. And if you don't want to buy something right now, don't buy because you think it's going to go up, right? I think it's like whatever your timing makes sense to you. Um, you know, let that lead your way, right? Don't try to speculate or think things are going to change much.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. If you're a homeowner that wants to occupy the home, and you've been kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting for this or that to happen or this to adjust, yeah, just pay attention to the fundamentals. No one's ever lost real estate buying a house in a good area. And maybe in the short run you might lose a little bit, but in the long run, you just don't seem to lose, or that's what history shows.
Right.
But if you're a speculative investor that, you know, caught the Airbnb bug, let's say, and went heavy in a certain area because everyone and their moms was making money there, it feels like, yeah, let's temper that back down, right? And let's
Yeah.
sharpen our pencils again and see not only in California, but in the country, maybe and internationally, where there's some places that there's some good arbitrage in your investment, right? So yeah, it's there's no easy money anymore. Let's put it that way, but
Yeah.
really, people are still investing, people are still buying, and finding reasons to do that, real reasons, not some imaginary reasons or delusions, right? And
Right.
and
Yeah.
and the market's still good in
Well,
that
the
sense.
homeownership is not just all about the money, right? Homeownership is, I really think, the reason what I would buy a home, the reason I bought a home was more for the stability for a family, and that was my reason, right? It wasn't because I was thinking I was going to invest and speculate. I mean, I believe in home ownership as an investment element, right? But I think it's also much more of a lifestyle self-actualization thing for in my case, and I think that's where a lot of people are. I just want to own a home and have stability, and it's my place, right? It's something that's innate in us, but um, I think that the the idea that home prices have only gone down twice nationally, right, since World War II. I heard Stephen Thomas talking about this. Was basically in the 90s when savings and loan crisis happened. California kind of brought down the whole country, and then the Great Recession, right? But I don't necessarily myself. I don't necessarily like to go off basically small number sets, right? Like there's going to be a third maybe, right? And you never know when that third's going to be. So I don't like to just say there's no way they're going to go down because only two times it's happened. But I also don't think that based on where we are as a country, as far as our debt and what we're able to do, there is some alarming numbers on personal debt. There's a lot of debt, but it's still like people are the incomes are doing okay relative, right? So I think it's again, I just don't see a case for bull or bear. I see a case for my hope is that we get to a market where rates do come down, so affordability does help, but that it doesn't create this frenzy of buying to where prices go up again and affordability comes right back down. I mean, it does no good if rates come down and people just buy up and drive the prices right back up to where it's unaffordable. So I think if we can find that balance where people are trading at levels that are just reasonable levels, and getting to the homes they want, and we have like a balanced market, right? Not too strong buyer, not too strong seller, and I think it's possible here based on the inflation data. I think we're maybe at a possibility. California is always going to be hard affordable wise, but I do think that we can find an
Yeah.
equilibrium. Yeah,
Yeah, and we've said this before, but what does it mean when the Fed drops rates, right? It means that there's pain, that they're trying to
right.
create a soft landing on something that's going to drag the economy down or whatnot, right? So, in ways, if you're hoping for rates to drop, you're hoping for pain, right? Because that's the requirement
Yeah,
for rates to drop, right? It's not just someone that says, "Hey, let's just make the rates drop," right? And
yeah,
that exists in a vacuum, and then everyone gets to go buy a house again or whatnot. It is, hey, the Fed is watching, especially the job numbers, right, and seeing, hey, our economy's still pretty good by a lot of measures, right? There's no need to drop rates, and in fact, if we did that, we might be headed backwards, right? On
yeah. It's to
inflation.
overcorrect, right? Like or
Overcorrect.
yeah, yeah. I mean, or not. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. Go back the other way. Like, hey, it's killing off, so let's go back the other way. And it's like, no, it's too soon, right? And so, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And so, during COVID, they took a pretty drastic measure and dropped the rates down to zero, which is pretty crazy and sustained for a very long time. So the pendulum has to swing the other way to some degree. And so I know from this last Fed meeting too, there's talks of maybe not dropping the rates at all this year, right?
right,
And that was scary for some to hear. It affected the mortgage rates a little bit because I think the mortgage rates had baked that in to some degree.
right,
And so people might have been scratching their heads like, oh, shoot, why didn't the rate jump up, let's say, due to that bad news that the rates are not going to be dropped. It's everything's kind of baked in there, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it does seem like it's going to be, if they're saying, hey, we may not drop rates all year, that it might be a pretty kind of even year with some fluctuations up and down, and hate to be, I would hate it if this sounded like Debbie Downer at all. But what we're saying is last year was a tough year, right? It was the lowest volume wise
Right.
number of
Very
sales
tough for
in what,
agents.
3 decades, right?
Yeah.
So this year, is it going to be much different? No, I think the projections are, hey, it's going to be higher than last year, which is great, you know. But I think what we're saying is, are we going to be, again, like just going gangbusters in real estate and seeing a lot of transactions happen because rates are dropping and this and that? We don't think so yet. We don't think so yet. But is it going to be a good year of real estate? Absolutely. Absolutely better than last year. Let's say it that way. Right.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah, I feel
yeah.
safe in saying that, right? That there's going to be more transactions, and I think that, yeah, definitely more opportunity. And I think that it's always, again, your numbers don't have to reflect the larger markets. You can outperform the market, right? Like, people that are there's always someone that outperforms every market, whether it be the stock market, whether it be in your job and your performance. But yeah, so I mean, okay, so I guess what we're saying here, we have to sum up what we're saying here is the best chance we would bet on is, I would say, number one would be things stay relatively the same for this year and maybe more home sale, but like we're not seeing anything drastically change. Second, what would be your second? Would your second scenario be a bull or a bear scenario yourself?
For this year,
Yeah, for this year.
um, I'd love to say bull. I'd love
Me
to say
too.
bull.
I'll
Yeah.
say my second likely one would be a bull. I think I could see because of I feel like but I guess everybody's waiting for the other shoe to drop with these tariff things, and I don't want to go into the whole tariff stuff, but I think that's the thing where people think the inflationary could come, and I think there's a lot of debate, and I think I've heard great arguments on both sides of it. So I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other. I think that no one wants to see inflation though go back up in the current administration. So I think that whatever they do, I think they'll course correct if it does something and there's always find a way of giving yourself an out of taking the tariffs off the table. I mean, we already kind of saw that a little bit when they did the Mexico-Canada thing, and then they pulled it back because they were making concessions to get the tariffs lifted. And so I think there's ways of walking back certain things, certain rhetoric to make sure that we don't fumble the ball with inflation, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. I just saw a question in the chat about
yeah,
inventory.
yeah.
From Carla Jones. What is the real number there? We can deliver that to you. But I think generally speaking, the inventory is up. Would you agree, Matt? I think
Inventory
inventory
is
is
up.
up all
We
around.
did we
Yeah.
did see we saw a lot of rollover inventory from the last year into this year, and I think the market got started a little earlier this year with people coming on the market. So those two things combined, inventory is up, um, and
Yeah. And
yeah,
we'll see how it plays out now that we're beyond the Super Bowl, and there's this kind of weird thing every year where after the Super Bowl, people start listing their homes. And so over the next 2-3 months, we'll see how inventory does. But our
yeah.
our, our feeling is it's going to be up. There's going to
Yeah,
be
by the way,
more
by the way,
homes.
it was up at the beginning, and then it went nationally. Here locally, some places inventory is down actually a little bit. Though I gotta say this: the inventory nationally was up. I think inventory was in some places here though. I want to make sure I correct that. Some places here inventory was actually going down a little bit relative to other years, like other years at this time. But I think that there's the thought is that inventory is going to pick up and do pretty well through May. Like you were saying after the Super Bowl, I think that the sentiment is that inventory is going to catch back up and get above here locally. But again, that's the hard thing about answering about inventory, because there's national inventory, there's state inventory, there's city inventory, there's neighborhood inventory. So that's why I always recommend, Altos research for agents to look at inventory and to say, what's the inventory here, right? What's the inventory in my market? What's the inventory in my city? And so I think that's, but generally, I think that it's a pretty balanced market right now. When it comes to demand and supply, like meaning we're still in a seller's market, so to speak, because inventory is still relatively low, but we're not in the kind of we're just not seeing the sort of demand that we've seen, in the prior, post COVID, during
Mhm.
COVID stuff. And so I think that from a meaningful perspective, I'd say this: here's what's actionable. Tell your sellers they need to price right. You need to price right in this market. You can't overprice things to any extent, and I don't want to go into the whole thing about pricing, but it's not as simple to say that buyers look at something and go, oh, that's overpriced. It's that buyers look at what they have options for, and they might not even look at your place if it's overpriced for that market, because there are options, more options there's been in the past. So I think just that if you're overpriced at all, you might not even get looked at. You might get kind of crickets. So I think it's important to price well right now, and for your sellers, that's what to expect. Still,
there are no bad homes, just bad prices on homes, right?
Right.
Everything sells at the right price. It feels like it's. I totally echo that.
Yeah, and also and the sort of I wouldn't say obsolescence, but any kind of obsolescence, whether on a home, is going to more drastically impact it now than it did in 2022, right? People buy homes that they'll rationalize, like, I know it's a busy street, but we need a home, or I know the floor plan's kind of odd, but we need a home. You don't have that right now. So if you are on a street, or you're on like you have a weird floor plan or something, there's a good chance you're going to tell the sellers, hey, you might have to take a little more of a haircut than you need to relative to other hotter markets,
Absolutely. And conversely, like homes that are turnkey, homes that are really well designed or really well presented, we're still seeing those homes get multiple offers, right?
Sure.
Selling within the first few days. And so it's a fundamental thing there,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So yeah, make sure you convince your sellers to do some cosmetic touch-ups and some staging, because that will actually provide a swing. It will definitely provide a swing in the price more than
It-
normal right now.
Here's a plug too. Where our sales meeting next week.
Yeah.
We are bringing some designers in the local area that are going to sit on a panel and will kind of walk us through what they're seeing in design, just from a design perspective, and what the trends have been, what the trends are headed towards. But also, we asked them to look at, what are the common, kind of renovations right now,
Right.
and the most effective ones to get homes sold and presented well. So it'd be a really good meeting to kind of listen to, and also there'd be some question and answer time for people to ask, from a design perspective, and and get some information that way. And we really wanted to provide this because as real estate professionals, we should know this, right? We should
Right.
know what are the best bang for the buck renovations, right? We should know to some degree, not to the like a master level degree, what the different finishes are in the home, what the cost levels of those finishes
Right.
are, right? What the desirability is for some of these things. And so it's going to be a really good one, I think, for us to kind of get our pencils sharpened in that sense, and to learn, and to soak in all that information.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about the fires real quick. It's not something that's pleasant, but I know it's a lot of people's minds as far as what are some of the things that might affect us in the industry as well as of our clients, from the fires. And so one of the things that I think is the first is obviously people are asking is insurance, right? And which, by the way, plug too, we're going to have an insurance panel coming up in beginning of March, right? So we're going to have some. Hopefully, there'll be some information that's being gleaned in the next, coming out of this, that will have some stuff to present then. But one of the things that I found interesting was that California actually ranks about 34th in cost of insurance for homeowners insurance per $300,000 of dwelling costs. So we might pay more here because our home prices are higher to some degree than other places, but relative, we're paying less. So as part of our mortgage, like the percentage of our homeowners insurance to our mortgages is relatively low than to more than half the other states in the country. So what that tells me is that there is some room potentially in the minds of insurance companies to have some increases, right? The top, and I know you have some thoughts on that maybe might not be as bad as people think, and I agree, but I do think if you look at Florida and Nebraska, those are the top two. They kind of rival each other for the top two costs of insurance per 300,000. And Florida is obviously, we know, because of hurricanes that they have to deal with. And Nebraska, I'm assuming, I haven't confirmed this, but I'm assuming it's tornado type weather events that's causes Nebraska to have high insurance rates. But that being said, California has been about earthquakes, and a lot of times earthquake insurance is not part of our hazard insurance, right? But fire is. So now that we've had these fires, could you argue they're proportionate to hurricanes and tornadoes, that they're going to become that part of our reality now? I think you would say still not to the level of hurricanes, right? Hurricanes are almost every year now that something pretty bad happens there. We're seeing, still every couple of years, and I mean nothing to this level, right? Like this was a pretty devastating all around event, that pretty unprecedented in recent history, right? So hopefully we don't get to those type of levels, ever again. Hopefully we do some things, but anyway, my point is the actuaries and underwriters are hard at work right now, probably trying to figure out what is really the outlook for this type of thing, and what's California going to do to mitigate it from a policy standpoint, and that sort of thing. But anyway, my point is there is room to go up. So I wouldn't be surprised if rates start to tick up a little bit for California across the board a little bit. But
I would say that's inevitable. I think it's just part of the business of insurance. We know that some of the companies, or maybe as a group, the insurance companies will probably take a loss somewhere in the neighborhood at least now around $50 billion in losses after all the payouts happen. So that is generally going to mean insurance policies go up. I think the fear out there from a lot of agents that I'm hearing and homeowners is, hey, are companies going to even want to insure properties in California? Will we have good insurance options, or will we all be subject to something like the California Fair Plan that may not cover us fully?
right,
And I think the answer is no. I think the insurance companies will continue to do business here. But what I'm hearing from insurance agents is that there are going to be conditions to it, meaning, hey, we will insure you, but you need to install this preventative measure or this, like, I don't know, like leak detection equipment, so that we feel good about insuring your house and that your house has things in place that help mitigate some of the risk, right?
right,
So I think there's going to be more of that happening. And yeah, I think premiums will go up. And hopefully, and maybe I know even California Fair Plan right now, the claims seem to be pretty high on that fair plan, and they only have $200 million in the bank to cover this. And so I read that they may be requesting another $1 billion. I don't know where
right,
it's going to come from, right?
right.
To help cover losses there. So yeah, and I think probably if you don't really look into this, the thought as you read headlines right now is that insurance companies are not paying out right now. There's a standstill until we figure out what's going on. But no, actually, there's a lot of movement happening. Insurance policies have been being paid, right? I have a friend who lost a house in the Palisades, and within days he's gotten his payouts, right? And he's turning his reimbursables in for the rent that he's paying right now. And so the companies are paying. Now, are they seeing the whole weight of all the claims? No, not yet, right? But
Yeah,
things are kind of in process. We know that 3 days ago, on the 11th, the city of LA has now started to clean up some of this stuff and get rid of some of the debris, and so things are moving. How fast they'll move, we'll see.
yeah,
President Trump came to town, and I think probably a lot of people watched the press conference where he was saying 18 months is not good enough. We need it now, right? And
right,
so there's a lot of push there, but it's a lot of coordination. It's a lot of planning, and it's a lot of resources that is going to be needed to get things moving really well. We know from precedences before too, right? What was it, the Paradise Fire and whatnot? It's been six
right,
years. Only a third of the homes have been rebuilt, right? I hope that doesn't happen here.
right.
But we have precedents too in Maui, right? And
Yeah,
the things going on there. And so it's still going to be some time, before
yeah,
things are getting paid out. But is it a standstill right now? No. And will companies fully pull out of insuring California? I don't think so.
yeah.
That'd be my bet.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that a lot of people in the insurance industry, you get mixed reactions, but I think there's a lot of optimism still. That like I think the optimism comes from the fact that we were already in this place of insurance being a problem before these fires, and the state did some big things, and insurance companies were kind of all rallying to come back to California, and we started to see that, and then the fires happened. So it's kind of unfortunate. I mean, more unfortunate as the fires, but I mean, the point is unfortunate for the industry of California's insurance, right? That happened for that. But I do think that there's some optimism that things will be okay. But I do think it's probably just across the board. You're going to have, it's going to put more strain on affordability from a debt to income ratio, because we do factor in insurance costs, right, with debt to income and mortgage people, maybe dwelling costs. Maybe there's going to be more scrutiny on dwelling cost coverage, right, for mortgages too, like saying, hey, we actually want a little bit more there. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how that's going to work, but there's going to be some working out of these things. But you mentioned Maui, and I think that, a year and a half was how long it took for them to clear everything out. California, it should be easier to get resources here, because I mean, you're in an island in Maui, right? You've got a lot logistically to get the machinery, the things, the people, right, to do things there. It's not as easy, right? Relatively, we have also a much larger area, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And I think there's a lot of unknowns of how they're going to let people rebuild, right? Like if they're going to make them keep their current footprint. I mean, in Maui, that we were talking about this, certain properties have to keep their prior footprint. They can't build bigger. They can't, they have to keep that, and they're expediting people that are willing to do that. And certain non-oceanfront stuff, some oceanfront stuff, they're not going to allow them to rebuild. They're going to, some of it was because of structural, just like it wouldn't meet code anymore to build where they built last time.
Right.
Some of it's because they're like, they're going to buy some of the land and make more public right of ways. So they're actually rezoning a little bit and taking the opportunity there, which, I mean, I understand it. I'm sure it's making a lot of people unhappy. And if they try to do that in Palisades and Malibu, that might also be problematic for a lot of people. But, it is a fresh start in some ways. And hopefully there's smart people that can figure out ways to do it and be fair to people and not hurt anybody. But anyway, so not to speculate on all that, but I think it's going to take some time and a lot of effort to get things where people feel like we're starting to move forward, right?
Yeah. I'll give an opinion of mine on some of this. There's a proposal, I think, on the table. I don't know how robust it is, but the idea of retroacting permits, letting people build using licensed contractors
All right,
that
right,
know the code, that can build safely, that have reputations and probably businesses on the line in the case that they don't build well, and they build something substandard, to go ahead and start building, right? And then to turn in their plans as to what they built, again, staying within the same footprint and whatnot,
right.
so that people can get to building quicker. Those are really great ideas. And again, they have their drawbacks as well. You're going to have people that don't follow the rules, cut corners, right? Want to cut costs to
Right.
build, right? And that's always part of human nature. But those type of plans I think are really good ones, and we see that kind of in different parts of the country. Not by law, but functionally.
Yeah.
There's parts of the country where you can hire a consultant to really kind of what do you call it? Document every step of your process, right? Every code issue, every inspection issue, and then once your permit is assigned to you, say, hey, I'm actually done. Here you go. I'm done. Check this out. And then the licensed contractors and the consultant show the work they've done, and they approve that build on the spot. So
Yeah.
hoping something like that happens. But it is a tragedy in some ways, and super heartbreaking to know what's going on. There's been so many antidotes from the fires that are really great and really heartbreaking at the same time.
Right.
The death count and all those things too. It's tough, and so we're not fully beyond it, but we are moving forward. I think February 11th is being a start date to remove some of that, to start removing debris is, I think, a really good move forward. And so
Yeah.
and our goal here, right, is to really keep you abreast as to what's happening in insurance, and so that's why we want people to come out and speak to our agent pool, and let our agents ask questions about it, and get educated about it, because there's a lot going on, and there's a lot going on moving forward. So I think it'd be really good for us to stay ahead of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as far as us, as far as the Orange County outlook, where we're prime, we have a lot of bulk of our agents here it doesn't seem to be affecting Orange County too much, like migration really much. I mean, there was already sort of some migration from LA County to Orange County over the last few years, for various reasons. But I think it doesn't seem to it seems like the statistically so far. Now we're early here, right? We're just a few months, or a month. But I know that rents in LA have been affected dramatically from a statistic standpoint, but not Orange County. Rents haven't really changed much in Orange County based on that, which all makes sense. It's pretty like kind of common. You would expect that I know that rents above $20,000 a month in LA County were tripled from January of this year compared to last January, right? As far as how many homes were rented at 20,000 a month above that, which makes sense too. If you have people from Palisades coming and needing to find something to rent, they're going to do that. And these are year leases; they're not short term. So, but we've heard the headlines. I mean, Airbnbs, obviously, they were trying to stop people from price gouging there. Airbnb actually stepped in and stopped their own people from doing that. They were flagging their own data sets, right, of people that were trying to raise prices dramatically. And they, the anti-gouging stuff that came in didn't mean that didn't happen. It doesn't mean that things didn't go up and weren't pushed up. And Airbnb is not the only short-term rental options. There's a lot of other short-term rental sites and things like that too. So, that stuff's all to be expected. Nothing surprising, right, up there. So really, it's. I think really the insurance thing is really the bigger kind of question to answer for people right now as agents. People are coming to us. It's like everything else is pretty common sense stuff that you would expect. I think the one that's more, up for speculation would be insurance and what's going to mean. And I think that I'm pretty confident, and I think you are too, that they're going to find pretty good solutions for us to go forward, because it is a big part of affordability for California.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully we start some smarter policy as far as fire prevention and things like that. And fire hardening stuff is already trying to get houses to come to things there, but maybe we'll see maybe for realtors, maybe we'll see more point of sale requirements in certain areas of like saying, no, we need to have inspectors come out, make sure that your home's fire safe as possible, that there's mitigation going on there. We'll see if that affects things there. But yeah.
I will kind of give an opinion here too. Recently there was like comments from one of it was the congressman that represent the area, Ted Lieu, and he got really like heated, right? I'm not saying I agree with him or not, but I think the gist of what he was saying was, hey, these fires, let's stop politicizing them and let's get to like helping and figuring out solutions to get people their homes back or to get people building. And I think that's always a good posture to have, irregardless of your political affiliation or your belief, that, hey, whatever is good for the people to rebuild, right now, that's kind of the big thing, right? So as you have conversations with people about this, it's fun to talk politics and to kick around ideas there. But I think, as professionals, maybe we can focus on the solutions and maybe the things that people are fearful about, like insurance going up and whatnot, and really give some light to that. So that's my opinion there. My 2 cents on that.
Dramatic opinion there, No, but I agree. I think it's the rhetoric. I mean, is definitely very politicized in California for sure. And I think there's been 2 reasons people have moved out of California, right? Is affordability and politics, right? We know that's been like why people cite when you talk to clients why they're moving out. It's one or the other or both, really. Usually, I mean, there's jobs too, but that's not usually the case. Usually, it's affordability. And there's no normal migration patterns. Get closer to family. My daughter lives in Texas and she just had kids. I want to be close to my grandkids. There's that type of stuff too that always happens. But as far as like the more recent migration patterns, it's been mostly affordability, and I think that that's going to be continue to be the case, right? That's going to still continue to be the case, that people are going to all right, so let's. I think that touched it. I mean, I think there's nothing really more. I think that's mostly it's that's the fire stuff. I mean, it's really the insurance thing. And as someone just mentioned that we've got a new fire map coming out that might put more homes in fire zones. And hopefully they're doing that with wisdom too, that they're not going to create our own problems there for insurance. But I think that no matter what insurance company, we're all going to share the cost of this, right? Like even if you're not in a fire zone. And I think that again, well, we'll see. There's gonna be more to come on this, but let's move on to AI. We've been thinking about a lot about AI.
Yeah,
everybody.
Absolutely.
Conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
and I'll start. You know me. I'm a huge AI
You
optimist.
are AI.
I am,
I'm not
yeah.
AI. You are AI.
No, you know, I think I feel like it's going to be a extremely deflationary technology, and I feel like people are always worried about jobs being lost, and we've seen through every leap in technology, you know, whether it be as far back, thinking of like what I learned in history class, like the cotton gin, right? You know, things like that that revolutionized crop, you know, type of what do you call it, harvesting and um, to the computers, right? That we're able to do things for people. We always create more new jobs. We always create some other. It opens up other job opportunities, right? There's always technology typically creates jobs. It doesn't destroy jobs. It doesn't. It destroys certain jobs. Like we were talking about, like if you're a mediocre computer programmer, AI can replace you. But if you're a really good computer programmer, then it may not. But it could also turn a mediocre computer programmer into like a nice small business opportunity for someone to make websites for people using AI because at least they understand the code. So there's always opportunity depending on who you are, what you could do with it, right? And for real estate agents, I feel like it's a huge opportunity for a lot of the writer's block that agents can have when it comes to MLS descriptions, when it comes to marketing content. What am I going to put on social media? How do I answer this email to this client who's really upset? Um,
Mm.
it's 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 like having the smartest personal assistant 24/7 you can have right next to you, and getting to use it as a tool like anything else. It's not magic, right? You can't just go AI do this and it's going to do it. You have to learn how to use it. You have to learn, and that's why I encourage people to start using it because you want to get better at it. You're like anything, you're going to be bad at it first, and then you get good at it. And so that's my advice: is to jump in. It's not going to ruin the world. It's not going to take over the world. That's humans' jobs. We've been doing that forever. We're the ones who mess things up. AI is just a technology like anything else. You know. So that's my optimism on AI. I think it's going to be a great thing for us, like any technology. But go ahead, you give your take.
Absolutely. Super excited about it. It's a weird time to be alive. I'll say that.
Right.
But a great time to be alive. You know, as a view, like we've been involved in tech projects or development of software where the costs were like pretty prohibitive, right? You either had millions of dollars ready to spend on dev teams and 2, 3 years of time to be able to develop things that
Right.
now in this day today could cost you nothing almost, right? And
Right.
maybe a
Right.
couple hours, right, of talking to ChatGPT and understanding how that works and how you can leverage ChatGPT to help you program. So um, it's a truly fun time because now you can really, I think, dream big and have you know the resources now to program that and to create that. So I think it's really cool. We are working on some things, and Matt, again, being AI, has shown how incredible the tools that are available are, and we'd be able to see some results on some things that we've always wanted to have as a brokerage within a couple hours, right? And so it's a really cool time. Again, I think we've said this many times, and I'm sure agents have heard this. There's no reason to be scared of it. I would be scared though if you're not engaging in it, because
Right.
those who are engaging in it and leveraging it are going to run circles around you. Like literally, you can have a conversation with ChatGPT right now about your real estate business and the things you need to do to create more business, to be better at following up with your old clients and your sphere of influence. And it'll give you some really awesome answers. And you would only have to pay like $20 a month for that type of
Right.
consult.
Right.
There's not a need for thousands of dollars of having a real estate coach. ChatGPT is pretty good right now at,
Right.
at doing that for you. And so, we joke about this all the time because we get questions all the time. But honestly, sometimes when agents ask us questions, we turn around and ask ChatGPT, and it gives us an amazing answer. And of course, we'll tailor it, right? So that it's not
That's
just
all we
a,
do now.
hey,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But but yeah, what it's doing right now, the data set it has is pretty incredible. So if you're not tinkering it with right now or with it right now, I would say please download the app, check it out, have some conversations. You don't have to be great at typing even. You can speak to it and it'll give you answers back. Gemini is the same way. I would say again, this is my opinion here, but I think the Gemini platform or the Google platform is a little better at picking and dictating voice, so it's a little sometimes easier to chat with it. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, so on the Apple platform, I think there's still a little bit of lag in terms of dictating your voice to text,
Yeah.
but you can have conversations with it, whatever platform you're on, and it sometimes is an amazing conversation.
Oh yeah.
And
Well,
yeah,
yeah. I'm sorry. No, no.
yeah,
I was driving home the other day from a soccer game. I had to drive. I was out in Norco at the Silver Lakes from coming back home, and I just you tap the button on ChatGPT, even the voice thing, and on your phone. You can't do it on the computer with phone. And I actually had a conversation on my drive home to work out some thoughts I was having about brand and things like that, and just having a conversation with it. And you just, it's, what do you think about this? And you talked. I'm okay because maybe I am AI. I'm okay having conversations with it. I don't have a problem with that. I feel very comfortable. Some people might feel like they're talking to themselves or talking to a computer. I don't have any problem with that for whatever reason. So I'm willing to talk to it and say, what do you think about this? And to me it's because it gets me thinking, and it's like brainstorming with somebody, and I think it's so anyway. So my point is, like you're saying, is like the voice thing, being able to just talk to it, and ask questions and learn. I mean, you can just learn. I mean, it's you can ask it, you feel like a little child. You can remember like children when they say, but why? Because of
yeah,
this. But why this, right? You almost can have that conversation with ChatGPT as an adult, where you're going, well, why is that? Well, why? And it's amazing what you can learn. So anyway, and of course, a lot of people say it's not always accurate, and it's true. It might not always be accurate, but it's fairly accurate when it comes to just factual things. It may be inaccurate if you start to try to do creative things and force it to do things. Sometimes it might hallucinate, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty factual and pretty accurate data you're getting back from it. Um, so anyway,
yeah,
so I do recommend it. I think just getting better at it is going to be a skill set to have. I do think we're entering a new era of our kind of understanding of like our possibilities with it, and as far as just with technology. I mean, I think this is a real leap in technology and leap in human capabilities because of it. And so I think being on that train is essential right now for you. If you are a person who's especially trying to earn your own income, you're not at the mercy. You are you have to be someone that can make things happen, right? You need to have this as a tool set. Like if you're at a job and you're working, they're going to give you what you need. That's fine. Maybe it's a little more dangerous there in the sense that you might be cut if you're not picking things up. But the point is, I just don't think there's any reason to one, fear how to use it, and fear that it's going to do something that you don't want. I think some people don't want to participate, like they're participating in something that's bad, and I think just that's not a good place to be in your mindset right now. That's it. Really, it's not the stand I think you want to take, especially if you're still in business. If you're retired and moving to the mountains and you're going to be a hermit, yeah, absolutely, you can reject all sorts of technology and things. But if you want to be in business and be relevant, you got to be part of it. In my opinion, that's my opinion.
absolutely. And maybe I'd say about the fear of like ChatGPT knowing too much or having too much of your data. Let's be honest here. If you have a cell phone, you have apps, you have social media, chances are all your data's out there.
Yeah,
It is out there, right? And so I don't think it's something to be fearful of. I'm not saying don't protect your data or your sensitive items. Of course, do that. But if you're fearful of that, just know that at every turn, if you own a Tesla, even that there's data being extracted from you by the millisecond, right? So it shouldn't be a fearful thing. But instead, when you talk to ChatGPT or Gemini or another AI platform, you want to train it, right? You want it to know who you are. For instance, when I talk to Gemini, it already knows that I'm a real estate broker, and our company name is Circa, right? And it has record of what we've been talking about. And so when I ask it a certain question, it'll say back, hey, because you're a real estate broker,
right.
and Circa is about good humans being great agents, right? It'll give me an answer. It's pretty amazing. Um,
Yeah,
so I love it. I think it was just the first inning, really, second inning maybe, in AI, and I think the amount it's going to grow and how proficient it gets is going to be exponential every inning we go. And so maybe that's scary for some. It's scary to me a
Right.
little bit, right? But it's also
Well,
extremely exciting.
yeah, well, and there's two things that have happened that are going to accelerate it more potentially. I don't think it was really going to be stopped anyway, but I think the two things that it developed is one is that the Trump administration is pro AI from a standpoint of, they brought in David Sachs to be the czar of AI and crypto, and you and I have been familiar with David Sachs for quite a while. He's a pretty smart guy. You want to talk about a guy who's AI? I mean, that guy, that probably is that guy's brilliant. But anyway, my point is they're going to be sensible about it. But the Biden administration had at the prompting that this is like, Elon Musk was actually pro regulating AI. Sam Altman was also pro regulating AI. And someone could say, well, maybe it was like that was building a moat, right? Like they were basically protecting that had the leader position in AI. So they wanted to keep everybody else out of it. But two things happened was one, the Trump administration has taken more of a stance that we can't regulate AI because we want to lead AI. And if we regulate it and hold our hands behind our backs, other countries are going to come in. And then two was the whole DeepSeek scare we had recently where China came out with, a Chinese company came out with an AI that seemed to be not as good, but almost as good with way less compute necessary, right? Like less. And again, we don't know where the story is real on that, right? No one's really sure. But it really what it's done is we're in a race now. Like we're in like the AI arms race, right, so to speak. And so U.S. is going to go full steam ahead, I think, with AI now and try to be pro AI and try to stimulate it rather than restrict it. So anyway, so like to your point, Abe, I mean, we're in the first innings here, but these innings are going to go fast,
Yeah.
And I think that you want to be involved and stay relevant in it for sure. And we'll do our
Yeah.
best to keep you guys relevant. If you guys let us know, we're happy to do some training on this and showing people. But I just go to the website and check it out. It's pretty. It's a most simplistic software you can use as far as like from a user standpoint. It's pretty simple to work on. So
Yeah.
um,
Provocative question, or maybe the question that's on a lot of agents' minds. Will AI replace agents? What do you think, Matt?
I think agents will replace agents using AI. I don't think AI will replace agents. So,
Mhm.
we've seen this already in our industry. It's like the 80-20 rule, right? 80%, it's in everything, right? 80% of the people do 20%, 20% do 80% of the business. And we've seen that the team movement has created these mega teams that have taken market share. If you ever listen to the rhetoric of these teams, like you hear, I'm not a huge proponent of teams and I won't get into all that. I'm not saying teams are bad. They're fine. I don't think you need to be on a team though. I don't think you have to have a team to be successful in this business. But I do think that the people who are taking market share over the last, 10 years or so using Zillow and using tools like that as big teams, they see it as there's no disruptors that are going to come and take our business. Redfin's not going to take our business. Zillow we're playing with, we're not playing against them, right? Our market, their market opportunity from their perspective is we're going to take business away from the agents who do those 2-3 deals a year. We're going to take business away from those agents who are doing 7 or 8 deals a year and can't get past that plateau. And we're going to offer better service, do this. So it's really just a market share game, I think, right? I don't think that there's any disruption that's going to happen from AI that's going to say there's a new company out there that has no agents and it's just AI selling homes. I just think it's going to be one more technology that's going to allow the people who adopt it and the people who embrace it to take more market share from the people who aren't. So that's my answer. So yes, AI is a threat to you, but it's not an existential threat of like to agents. It's only an existential threat to agents who are not embracing it. And that's why we're here, beating the drum of saying you need to embrace it because you don't want to be replaced by other agents.
Absolutely. And I'll add to that, I think we've been preaching this for a while now too, that um, agents should have a deep knowledge of a certain niche or a geographical region, and that maybe AI cannot replace that, or a data set can't replace what you know about that area. For instance, when I travel to, let's say, Japan, I got a friend that I can call that knows the new cool bars, restaurants, places to be, right? That maybe Yelp or their equivalent of Yelp may not give me, right? If you search, for great Chinese food in Los Angeles, you might get Panda Express, right? Based on the reviews or whatever it is. And I love Panda Express, just a disclaimer, right? But Panda Express, based off the data, may not be the best Chinese restaurant that you want to experience, right? It might be the most the what do you call it? The quintessential LA Chinese restaurant to go to, right?
Right.
In the same way, I think as agents, if you know the neighborhood, you know your niche extremely well, you know beyond the data that is out there, right? For instance, in this book of home or this block of homes, I know why they sold and where they moved to and what the pressures were for them to sell, and that's how pricing came out that way or whatnot. And so I think the more you position yourself as an agent in that way, there's no way still that AI could replace you. If you are an agent though that is not positioned that way, right? And we run into this all the time. It's like, hey, my client wants to buy in the city that I don't really know that well. In fact, they know more about that city than I do, right? They have more data, they have more history there. What is my role in this? Am I just like now a contract facilitator? You know, um,
Right.
I hope not. I hope that we can always kind of be ahead of that, you know, in terms of the knowledge and the deep rooted knowledge
Yeah,
in real estate.
100%. Yeah, I mean, relevancy, right? Like people want to work with someone who's relevant, and so people give you if you're someone's good friend or you're someone they past client and they know you're good, they see you produce, they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you're relevant, right? That yeah, you're relevant. You sell homes. We've seen you on social posting these things, so you get the benefit of the doubt. But there is a point, right, where we've all been there where there's somebody that would want to work with you, but they just feel like someone else is more relevant, right? Like meaning, hey, we'd love to work with you, but this guy sells every home in our neighborhood, and he told us this and this and this, and you're like trying to compete with that. And even though they like you, trust you, that guy just seems that much more relevant than you, right? And I think that so there's going to be more of that, right? Like you need to be able to win relevancy wars, right? Not just the relationship is always going to be there. That's always going to be, you need to own that equity with your people and in your social circles and your past clients. But there's that relevancy. You've always got to stay relevant. You've got to always be able to win that as well. Yeah. But it reminds me of what you were saying earlier. Was it Good Will Hunting where he talks about, you could read about it in books, but you know what it smells like inside the Sistine Chapel, right? So
Right.
AI will never know what it smells like inside the Sistine Chapel, right? So it's like, there's always the human element that's always going to be able to relate better to humans than some machine. And so I think that's absolutely there. And people want to work with humans, right? Like the voice of another human is like the most stimulating sound to us, right? Like we want human connection. So the human connection is always going to need to be there. And I think that the AI is always going to be it's never going to be our master, right? We're going to be its master. I believe. I think it's that humans, again, not to go down another rabbit hole, but
No,
but even in our business, we're always going to lead the ship, and I think it's just being relevant that you need to focus on and use it as a tool. It's like
that's
someone
right.
not wanting to use a cell phone, right?
Yeah,
Could
or
business.
drive an automobile. They'd rather take
Right, right.
horseback.
Yeah.
Let's see. Um, but yeah, cool.
Cool guys. Yeah. So yeah, I think we've gone over our time, so I think we're
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Happy
happy
Friday.
Valentine's Day, guys, and happy long weekend. Abe, have fun in the snow if you get there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you. You as well. And then yeah, have a great weekend. And please do let us know if there's something you'd like to see us address at all. That helps us, you know, in pinpointing what is relevant to you. And so yeah, please do let us know if there's something we can talk about that would help you.
Sounds good. Yeah. Okay, guys. Take care. Bye.
All right.